Live.
It is WKXX Live on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome in. So glad you are joining us. Chase Robinson here alongside Gerhard Mathangani. Gerhard, appreciate you holding down the fort yesterday as I took the day off. Glad to be back. And you had an eventful show yesterday.
Yeah, it's always great. I'll take you behind the curtain for a little bit, but it's always great whenever you're starting to get your rundown. You think about topics for the show, and then boom, just a news item hits you that's not only the top story in this area, but the top story in the entire country. And so it shifts around some things a little bit. And it was great to hear some people who are connected with the Auburn program and college football in general, and to be able to have them on. I know they were reeling as well. We had guys like Zach Blackerby who we talked earlier in the day. He's like, he could do it. And then after that, he was like, he had to do an emergency podcast. And so we were able to get everything in and kind of hit the story from a bunch of different angles. And so it's one of those good days, and maybe not good day for everybody, but a good day as far as content goes.
We're going to stay on that track a lot today, talk Auburn football. Coming up in just a few minutes, Jeffrey Lee. He is a recruiting analyst from auburnlive.com, and he's going to join us. And I'm curious to see from his perspective what this is going to do to recruiting, how this is going to look. If guys are already saying, I don't want to be a part of this program now, or guys are saying, hey, I'm a little more interested in this program now, that they're going to be looking for a new head coach. So we'll kind of talk from that angle. Jeffrey Lee also does a lot there with Auburn, so we can get his thoughts. And also we're going to be talking a little bit later on, and we'll also get Blake Topmeyer's thoughts. He's SEC columnist from USA Today. Get his thoughts on what's going on. And I think Topmeyer has a bigger picture of, could another SEC coach be going for this Auburn job? So we'll be looking at it from some different angles today. We'll also talk plenty of other college football, high school football as well. We'll get to the World Series and the NFL. So much to get to today. Would love for you to be a part of the show. Auburn fans, I'd love to hear from you. 256-413-1029. Your thoughts on everything going on down on the plains. But it was announced yesterday. I'm not sure if this was announced while you were on the air or not. Carnell Cadillac Williams is the interim coach now with the Auburn Tigers, a guy right here from Etowah County.
Yeah, it's great to see that they're kind of keeping it in-house. But the announcement was made after we went off the air yesterday. There was a team meeting held at 3:00 in the afternoon. So there was one of those situations where the players and the coaches all got together. And then once they found out, once the dust settled, because it wasn't just Brian Harsin that was getting canned, some other coaches were getting canned too. Of the ones that were left, it was Cadillac Williams that ended up, being able to get the job as the interim. And so I don't know if they have said out loud if this is a kind of an audition, so to speak, for Carnell Williams, but it's good to see, a guy that went to Auburn, a guy that's from the area, be able to lead the Tigers for the last few games.
Yeah, and he's got a tough challenge ahead of him, leading this program. Getting these guys. I think they'll be motivated, they'll be ready to play, but he's got a tough job over the next few weeks to coach this Auburn team. And he's a guy that I thought it was good that Harsin had him on staff just from a recruiting perspective. He relates well with these guys, having played at Auburn, being from the state of Alabama. And I thought he was going to be a crucial piece for Harsin to have on staff. And I thought it was a great decision there to name Carnell Cadillac Williams as the interim head coach. He's been the running backs coach there for the Tigers.
Yeah, and it's good to see, I think, to keep some kind of continuity within the program as far as what the team likes to do offensively. Carnell Williams is really adamant about both the recruiting angle and what they're doing from an offensive game plan. So I don't expect to see that many changes as far as the way that Auburn runs their offense. And I think at the same time, too, they understand the players have an affiliation and allegiance to Carnell Williams, especially the guys that, committed to Auburn because largely of Carnell. And so if nothing else, it'll keep some kind of level of consistency, motivation, and intensity high, both in practice and in games.
Yeah, and they need that, and so I think he's the guy for the job. You mentioned other coaches fired yesterday as well. It wasn't just Harsin; it was every guy that Harsin brought in that he had ties to hit the road yesterday too. Offensive coordinator Eric Kiesau and tight end coach Brad Bettel, the two on-field coaches that were fired yesterday. And also you had a couple of assistants. I know the strength coach let go yesterday as well. The general manager, I forget what his technical title is.
The chief of staff of the football team. There's like four members of the support staff are gone, including Brad Lorando, Darren Ursher as well. Were also fired. So it wasn't just Brian Harsin, but as you said, it was interesting to see the guys tied to Brian Harsin that were fired. Keep in mind that Eric Kiesau was the offensive coordinator, but remember after the inquiry from Auburn into Brian Harsin, and that inquiry turned up nothing, they were on the search for an offensive coordinator. Austin Davis, the quarterbacks coach for the Seattle Seahawks, accepted the job, had it for 2 weeks, and then resigned. And so there was always just some weird, shadowy, what in the world is going on with this Auburn offensive coordinator job. It seemed radioactive, and then here they are now with Eric Kiesau gone. So I don't know what was going on in those offensive rooms, but it seems like it's been a turbulent, 8 months now.
Yeah, it really has. Just looking at kind of how things are going to shake out as far as the staff goes, according to Jeffrey Lee, who we'll talk to in a minute, his first report yesterday afternoon that Carnell Williams, of course, is moving to be the interim head coach. Offensive analyst Jeff McDaniels will help Williams with the running backs, so he'll be will step in as the running backs coach. Will Friend will move into the offensive coordinator role to replace Eric Kiesau. Then Ike Hilliard will serve as co-offensive coordinator to Will Friend. Will, of course, keep coaching the wide receivers, his main position. Offensive analyst Kendall Simmons will help Friend with the offensive line as the co-offensive line coach. And then Joe Bernardi Jr., who is the offensive line assistant, will move into the role of tight ends coach. And then offensive analyst Mike Hartline will coach the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's a jumbled situation here. But if you look at Auburn support staff on their official page, all those people are still listed as support staff members. And so, now that Auburn has 8 official members, they were able to bring on some more members to the on-field role. So it's interesting to see how that all shook out. But Will Friend, your offensive line coach, is now your offensive coordinator, and Carnell Williams, who was your running backs coach, is now your interim head coach. What do you think this Auburn program is going to do for a while? Run the football, run it with physicality, because that's what Will Friend likes to do, and run it with the running backs, that's what Carnell Williams, number one, recruits, and he coached. And so I think that they're showing you from where they're positioning the guys that will be leading this team through the last few games of the season. Where they're positioning them is where they're going to be, pretty much focusing their offensive game plans.
Yeah, and so if you're an Auburn fan that wants to see them run the ball more, well, you tune in to the last 3 games. And when you get the running backs coach as your head coach, you'll probably see that. Brian Harsin did release his statement today. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That would take probably a whole segment, but I will read parts of it. He starts out just, I'm incredibly disappointed that I won't get to lead the Auburn football program and these players into the future. I poured my heart and soul into this program and team. We stood together in the face of considerable challenges and outside noise through my entire time at Auburn. We did things the right way, which is not always the easy way. I'm very proud of the resolve shown by everyone in our facility and incredibly grateful for those at Auburn who stood by me and my family. And he goes on and says a lot after that, but and I know it's tough on him. I think, though, that, we may see him coaching again, maybe out west. Mm-hmm. He had success out there previously. Maybe it's time he goes back out there, finds an open job, which I'm sure there will be very soon, and he can have some success out there.
Yeah, the Arizona State job comes to mind if he wants to go to the Power 5. I think that there'll be several jobs open from the Group of 5 level that he will be a top candidate for. Obviously, he had some success there as Boise State's head coach, and I think the coaching's still in his blood. Of course, he will make about $7.75 million over the course of the next 30 days, and the other 7.75 will come in 4 installments after that. So he'll get this buyout first, and then he'll be able to have a little time off. So it's one of those things where even if he takes a year off and then comes back a little bit later, I think he'll be in really good position.
Yeah, and so lots changing at Auburn right now. We're going to continue that conversation. I do want to talk some potential coaching candidates later on in the show, but coming up next, we're going to talk with Jeffrey Lee from AuburnLive.com. AuburnLive.com is the place to go for all of your Auburn information. We will talk with Jeffrey Lee coming up next.
At YMCA Summer Camp, kids find their why. Friendship and fun, a world of adventure beneath a
It's 102.9.
It is WKXX Live on Fox Sports 102.9, Northeast Alabama's only sports talk station. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani here with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Glad you are along with us. And we've been talking about what's going on down at Auburn. And we're going to talk now with Jeffrey Lee, AuburnLive.com. Jeffrey, as always, great to have you on. I know you guys have been busy down at Auburn the last, 24, 30 hours?
Just another day in paradise, man.
Well, I'm curious, just as everything's unfolded since midday yesterday, how are things down in Auburn as far as the players, kind of the vibe around the program? I know there's a lot of unknown and will be. That comes with the coaching change, but from what you can tell, how are things as far as the players and the things around the program?
Very hopeful. This is something that I think a lot of Auburn people have been waiting on for quite a long time, especially since the Penn State game. But I think there's a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, a lot of joy. I mean, a lot of people are excited to see what the future holds for Auburn now that Harsin has finally been let go.
For sure. Hey, Jeffrey, Gerhard here. I think another key angle to this has been something that you keep close tabs with is the recruiting side of it. As far as it relates, and I know as of right now, it's probably not the right time to take the temperature of it, but with what we've seen so far of guys going into the portal and what we've heard so far as what's going on the recruiting trail, how do you think Auburn patchworks this whole situation? What do you think is their game plan, at least for this next few months before we go to that early signing date and moving forward?
To keep the guys that are interested, and to get that head coach named as soon as possible. They've got a lot. Believe it or not, Brian Harsin and staff, they were in on a lot of, and they still are in on a lot of top recruits, 5-star guys. Clay Russo, James Smith from Montgomery, Ruben Bain from down in South Florida. A lot of guys, they were had on the hook. They weren't able to reel them in, and I don't know that they would have been able to reel them in, but they at least have the next staff in position to be able to close with these guys. So depending on who the head coach is, the next head coach is going to be, the guys that are in there now are just going to keep plugging away. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that some of these staff members, recruiting personnel I wrote about this morning, director of player personnel, we know, director of recruiting Darren Usher's gone, chief of staff Brad Larondo's gone, head of scouting, general manager Drew Fabianich is gone. Drew Fabianich was big for this class, so losing him was big for a lot of recruits. However, you still got Stephen Ruzick in there. You've got Trevon Reed in there, and then, of course, most of the assistant coaches who have the relationships with these top guys like Rock Bellantoni and Christian Robinson, Zach Etheridge, Carnell, obviously. So they've got guys in good position. They just need somebody to come in and close it for them. And I think the quicker you get a head coach named, the quicker we're going to know how this class is going to shape up, because right now it is crap.
We're talking with Jeffrey Lee, AuburnLive.com. You mentioned Carnell Williams, now the interim coach. He actually is from right here just outside of Gadsden, where we sit doing this show right now. And so it's great to see a local guy in the position now as interim head coach. And I know he's had a hand in recruiting and been able to develop a lot of relationships. Do you think him leading the program the next 3 or 4 weeks as the season finishes up, what's his relationship like with the players, first of all, and how will you kind of see them respond to him taking over this program?
Extremely well. I don't think Auburn could have done better. I think at some point a lot of people thought it might be Zach Etheridge, who was the associate head coach after last year, but I thought Auburn hit a home run going with Carnell. He is humble. He is modest. People respect him. People admire him. He is a fantastic individual, fantastic coach. I don't think they could have could have come up with anybody better to serve as interim. So I really like what Carnell's doing. What Carnell's got to do now, in addition to leading this team, this program for the next few weeks, he's got to keep an eye on his 4-star running back commitment, Jeremiah Cobb from Montgomery. Georgia's gotten in on him the past couple of weeks. He's going to Georgia this weekend for an unofficial visit, and so there are a lot of things that he's probably, of the 10 commitments they have right now, Jeremiah Cobb's probably the only guy that other schools like Georgia and Alabama would want. Let's put it that way. So he's kind of the jewel of this class right now, the gem of this class, and so Carnell will have to be continuing to, and he has a fantastic relationship with Jeremiah Cobb. Without Carnell Williams, Jeremiah Cobb is not committed. So Carnell's going to have to keep tabs on him in addition to running this program.
No doubt. From what you've seen and what you've heard down there, what is the timetable, do you think, for Auburn to name their head coach? I know whenever they hired Brian Harsin, they made that official. I believe it was Christmas Eve. Do you believe it waits that long? What is your expectation on the timeline overall for when they make this decision?
They better not wait till Christmas Eve. If they waited till Christmas Eve, they've now lost 3 recruiting classes, and that's a self-imposed death penalty right there, because the last 2 recruiting classes have been well below SEC and Auburn average. You've got to capitalize on this recruiting class. You've got to hit the portal hard in December. You better be ready to go December 27th when you wake up from after a loss to Alabama. I don't know that a head coach will be named, but it better be named in that week before December. I think the SEC championship game is December the 3rd.
Right.
Auburn should be making a hire December the 4th, having at least, two weekends to bring guys in on official visits, because that early signing day is December the 21st. So you've got about 3 weeks by the time the SEC championship game ends until early signing day begins, and you better be ready to use every day of those 3 weeks to get guys to jump on board with your new staff, your new direction, your new vision there at Auburn.
With that early signing day, and I think we see coaches or universities making coaching decisions earlier in the season to maybe make that happen, where they do have a coach in place before the early signing day. How have you seen kind of that evolve as the day that most guys make their decisions to, would it be better for situations like this for maybe to scratch that early signing day and move it all back to February?
Yeah, it would. And Jeremiah Cobb is a guy who might wait until later, but man, with the way things are going, everything just keeps getting moved up. And, early signing day has now become basically the de facto signing day. The guys in February, and it's really tough to fill a class in February because most of the top recruits have already signed. So it's like I said, you better be able to have a guy ready to go first week of December, and you better have some recruits ready to go by the 3rd week of December.
For sure. I think if you were, if let's say that you were a fan and remove you from your professional role, who would you want? Or who is somebody that represents, from your perspective, somebody that Auburn needs, whether it's a specific guy or maybe the traits of a guy that can put Auburn where Auburn wants to be?
I've got my top 2 are Deion Sanders and Lane Kiffin.
Okay.
I think your tier 2 realistic guys would be Hugh Freeze, Matt Rule. Those seems to be the 4 guys most popular, most buzz around right now. And I'm going to tell you, the buzz around Deion Sanders is absolutely real. I really believe that there are a lot of powerful men, influential money men at Auburn that are ready to hand him the keys. And as a guy who covers recruiting, it would be fantastic. I mean, you think covering Bruce Pearl's recruiting is easy. He gets guys that he wants. Deion Sanders would absolutely change the landscape of Auburn recruiting with the likes that we've never seen before. I mean, monumental hire as far. And listen, Auburn needs that more than anything. I've said that. In a new coach, the number one characteristic, quality, is he needs to be an elite recruiter. Because if you've got the Jimmys and Joes, you can figure out the X's and O's. I said last night, I could coach Nick Saban and Kirby Smart's team to 8 wins. They've got so much talent. Auburn has, they're so depleted. The roster's so depleted. All these transfers, the past 2 recruiting classes have been so poor that it's going to take a while before Auburn has the talent 1 through 85 to compete with Alabama and Georgia. The guy who can turn that around quicker than anybody is Deion Sanders, and I think Lane Kiffin's not too far behind him, because Lane can get Auburn back to winning, or at least competing in talent-wise, because he's so good in the transfer portal. And with Auburn's NIL, at its peak right now since it started, and I wouldn't say it's peak, it's trajectory, but it's the best it's been since they started this onto victory. Auburn could have a huge December, depending on who the assistant coach is, and because of the NIL. So I think you've got to be able to capitalize on this early signing period. Deion Sanders would certainly be able to do that. Lane Kiffin would certainly be able to do that. And those are the two guys, that, in my opinion, I would be concentrating on if I had enough money to have a say-so in the matter.
And Jeffrey, I know you cover recruiting a lot. You understand the ins and outs of this. What makes Deion Sanders a good recruiter? I mean, we saw him flip Hunter over and come to Jackson State, but that's really the only big name commit we've seen go there. But what makes him a good recruiter?
He's got it all, man. He's got what these kids are looking for. He's so relatable to these kids. He's been through their shoes. He's walked. He's done everything that they want to do. He knows where they come from. He knows the issues that they face, the troubles that they have. He can, and he's just as good with the parents as he is because he's a parent. Yeah. So he's done it all. He's got the charisma. He's very personable. Anything you want from a guy, Deion Sanders has. The only thing he doesn't have is experience. He's coached 3 years at HBCU level, and you want him to come in at a marquee SEC, historically a marquee SEC program. So that's probably the only concern there is the lack of experience Deion has at Power 5 football, which is none.
Right.
So a lot to like about him and very little not to like.
Definitely. I'll ask you this from the other side of this. How much interest do you think there is the other way? With if we were talking about either Lane or Deion Sanders, are you sensing as much interest coming the other side? I can see guys maybe like a Jeff Grimes or guys who haven't coached, maybe just their eyes lighting up, getting an SEC job. But how attractive is Auburn right now to you think potential candidates, including those top two that you mentioned with Prime and Lane?
It is a 5-star job. It is the biggest job. I think Georgia Tech, Nebraska, Colorado, and then Auburn. And like I said earlier, historically, Auburn is the only top 40. I mean, you got Nebraska in there that's been there traditionally, but right now the biggest, the marquee job opening right now is at Auburn, and there are a lot of guys interested in that. I don't think that's a problem. Of course, we know Hugh Freeze would, he would crawl on broken glass all the way to Auburn. I kind of think Auburn hopes they don't get to that point, but even still, he's a great football coach. But I think who's Matt Rule, Jeff Grimes, he doesn't really move the needle as far as recruiting goes. He might be a great recruiter, he might be a great leader, he might be a great coach, but man, Auburn needs some momentum, some public momentum. They need some buzz. They need ESPN talking about the hire every night, and generating a lot of excitement around the program. Lane Kiffin, Deion Sanders, those two guys move the needle for you. Matt Rule, he's had some success at Baylor and at Temple, but not so much in the South, in the Southeast. Yeah. So Jeff Grimes, he's got he knows the lay of the land here at Auburn, but really nobody really knows who he is. Nobody knows who Jeff Grimes is. So being able to capitalize on this opportunity for Auburn, I think you look at Deion, you look at Lane, either one of those two guys. I honestly believe either one of those two guys, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, certainly agree with you there. Jeffrey Lee, you can check out his content there, auburnlive.com. The folks there with the On Through group do a great job of covering Auburn athletics and especially all this going on with the football program. Jeffrey, always great to talk with you. Appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Jeffrey. Jeffrey Lee, auburnlive.com. I've got a lot I want to say and a lot I want to talk to you. So let's take a break, come back, talk more Auburn football. We'll do that on the other side.
Fox Sports 102.9 is Alabama's sports giant. You'll hear Dan Patrick in the mornings, Colin Cowherd middays, WKXX Live with Chase Robinson in the afternoons, and the press box on your drive home. Plus, Hopes Bluff football, Jacksonville State football, and high school football scoreboard. Alabama's sports giant. WKXX, Fox Sports 102.9.
COVID-19 has disrupted our lives, but it won't have the last word. We will. Across
WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. It is Chase and Gerhard here with you on a Tuesday afternoon. 256-413-1029 is our phone number. Again, that is 256-413-1029. I appreciate Jeffrey Lee, AuburnLive.com, for joining us last segment. Want to hit on a couple of things, though, that he talked about. Kind of the names everybody wants: Lane Kiffin, Deion Sanders.
Yep.
Those are the first two names that are going to be mentioned. I think a lot of, Hugh Freeze is a name that I think is a little more realistic. But Deion and Lane Kiffin, are these realistic hires for Auburn? Because the Auburn fans want them. There's talk all around these guys. Do you see Lane Kiffin or Deion Sanders coming to Auburn, Alabama?
2022, no. Maybe any other time, possibly yes. This is the thing about the Auburn job, and respect to Jeffrey Lee, because I really like him. He does great work. I do think that Auburn is a 5-star job as far as if you're just taking the job of winning a championship, being able to compete, the finances, where you're competing, where you're getting guys, the amount of resources poured into the organization. 5-star job, 100%. But it's not a 5-star situation right now. In the same sense, though, but I think Auburn kind of sees themselves and maybe sees this job akin to where when USC was looking for a new head coach, they see it, we have a 5-star job. Yeah, it was a 5-star job, but it wasn't a 5-star situation. But they got a home run hire. I think that Auburn thinks that they could be like USC. You go get a 5-star hire, he could turn the program around very quickly in the transfer portal, in recruiting, and then you have what Lincoln Riley has built at USC at Auburn. I don't know if it's that easy right now. And I wanted to ask specifically to Jeffrey Lee about the interest the other way. What do the top tier coaches think about Auburn? Now, I think that all of them know that Auburn is a good place. And Auburn has just won a championship in 2010, went back in 2013, probably could have played for it in 2004. Recent success. However, I just don't know how attractive it is right now for maybe a guy like Lane Kiffin, who's at Ole Miss right now, who has a job right now and a program right now where Auburn hasn't been in a very, very long time.
Yeah. And I think with the changing landscape of college football, yes, Auburn has a great NIL collective. Mm-hmm. They have, great money that comes in for these student athletes. But these, a few years ago, these coaches would have wanted to come to Auburn because of what Auburn has to offer. Now, you can just about do that wherever. Yeah. There's going to be more schools like Auburn was a few years ago, i.e. Ole Miss. I think that's why Lane Kiffin's not going to leave, because he can do what he can do at Auburn. He can do at Ole Miss right now. Deion Sanders can do that at Jackson State right now. It's just, I don't know if the name is as important now in college football. The name Auburn is as important. I don't know. College football is changing. We have to be willing to watch it change, to let it change, and coaches talk. And that was my next point. Coaches talk. Coaches know what's going on at Auburn. And I don't see Deion Sanders and Lane Kiffin being controlled by the boosters the way the boosters at Auburn want to control the coaches.
And I think that's kind of the bigger part of this. The only way that I could see Auburn landing one of these, let's call them the whales. They do this in the NBA trades all the time. If you can get a whale, the only way I think the whale ends up coming is if they're promised that there's not going to be any meddling from the outside into their program. I don't know if Auburn can necessarily promise that, given what we've seen over the course of the last maybe 12 years, 10, let's call it 10 years of the program. I don't know if there's not going to be any of that meddling going in. Keep in mind that there was talk to get rid of Gus Malzahn way before, but a couple of upsets of Alabama kept him his job. And then next thing you know, he has a fat contract, and then it was harder to get rid of him because of that buyout. There is a thing about Auburn right now that I do believe that people in the coaching ranks see it from the outside, and unless, like I said, and one of the things I wrote it down as Jeffrey Lee said it, the buzz around Deion is real, and they're willing to give him the keys to the kingdom. The comma on the back part of that is the part that I can believe in words. I don't know if I actually believe it in reality.
Yeah. And I mean, Auburn is going to have to, if they want to be successful, they're going to have to hand those keys to whatever coach they hire.
Yeah.
Whatever direction they decide to go, they've got to hand those keys off to them and let them do their job.
And think about it. Think about the two names that are leading this thing. Deion Sanders and Lane Kiffin. These aren't guys that we would call sheepish, tight-lipped. They won't say anything. These guys will talk. So, yeah, if you want to control somebody, the top two candidates are not guys that you can control, at least from the outside looking in. They might be able to follow some marching orders to a certain degree, but these aren't guys that are just going to just line up and do whatever, take whatever. No. These are guys that march to the beat of their own drum. So if Auburn really is about getting a guy that is good for the program and getting a guy that can march to their own drum, for sure, these are the guys that you want to go with. If you want to go with a guy that will do things kind of the way that, the powers that be, for lack of a better term. I even hate when people say that, but it's the only thing it's the only label that I have right now. Well, then, you can go get another guy that you can basically control. It's to me a situation where I think Auburn looks at themselves in the mirror and they see a different image of themselves that maybe everybody else around it sees. They can get on the same page with their vacancy and who they get and who they are. Then they got something, but I just don't know if I see it all playing out right now in the same way that they do.
I think back to when they hired Harsin. Mm-hmm. We saw so many names floating around because Malzahn was fired the weekend after the Iron Bowl?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And so and they didn't make the official hire till the 23rd of December for Harsin. Mm-hmm. And in that time period from the end of November to almost the end of December, there was a lot of names that were thrown around. And we thought, oh, this guy's for certain get it. This guy, well, none of them panned out. Why? Because it wasn't who the boosters wanted. Alan Green went around them and brought in Brian Harsin. We see what happens. But if the program is in shambles right now, it was not really then.
Yeah.
So what is appealing about this job right now is what, as I'm curious about, and I'd love to be able to talk to some of these coaches and ask them, what is appealing about Auburn right now? Because it's worse than it was 2 years ago when they were looking to make Brian Harsin, and they struggled finding a coach then.
Right. I think the one appealing thing about the job is, and this is not necessarily specific to Auburn. This is an in general thing. The appealing thing about Auburn is the one part that is specific is Auburn has won a national championship. They could be in the hunt as far as talent goes. The other appealing part is just look to what USC has done in California.
Yeah.
Look what Mel Tucker did last year at Michigan State. I know Michigan State has dropped off a lot this year, but you can turn around a roster pretty quickly in this day and age, given the new NCAA rules. Now you can, with NIL money, entice players that you might not have gotten a hand on a little bit earlier because of the new rules with the NCAA. You can change your 1 to 85. That's one of the things that Jeffrey Lee talks about. Your 1 to 85. They won't be able necessarily to compete with Alabama and Georgia's 1 to 85 tomorrow, but you can change 1 to 50 relatively quickly. Now, if you could do that and then get a chance to snag a couple of guys that are freshmen or whatever, then maybe, Auburn is a little bit more appealing. The fact that you can turn a roster around relatively quickly. That's the only thing that I can see with Auburn that is solid. And the fact that they recruit this area well. The one thing about Auburn is from a geographical perspective, you get Atlanta, you get Florida, you get Birmingham, the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
You get those talents from those places, junior college as well. So, that to me is the appealing part about Auburn. But Lane turned Ole Miss around in a heartbeat with the transfer portal. We just talked about USC. We just talked about Michigan State. These are advantages that other programs have as well. Is Auburn that much better at doing it than a Mississippi State, than a Mississippi, or than another other place? That part, I don't know. It seems subjective, but to me, from the outside looking in, it doesn't necessarily seem that there is this huge, gigantic leap between Auburn and those schools.
Yeah, very good point there. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about. We could spend the whole 2 hours talking about Auburn football, but we're not. We're going to take a break here. Much more to get to on this Tuesday afternoon, and we'll continue on in just a moment. WKXX Live continues on a Tuesday afternoon. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani here with you. And the North-South All-Star game it's a big deal here in the state of Alabama to be chosen to be on the teams to represent the northern half of the state, the southern part of the state to play each other. And the roster has been announced, Gerhard, and my goodness, it's the local talent that is representing, which is always very exciting.
Yeah, this North-South All-Star game, I really love the tweak that the AHSAA as well as the the Alabama High School Athletic Directors and Coaches Association they've made with this team. Now, this team is now 2 teams, 37 members apiece, and it used to be played in the summer with all of the other all-star sporting events. But that's not the case this year. In the last couple of years, what they've done now is instead of having rising seniors play in the summer, they're now having graduating seniors playing in December. So this is after the state championship games. This is set for December 16th at Hancock Whitney Stadium down in Mobile. Once again, as Chase mentioned, a bunch of guys that have talent that play here locally have been listed on the team. So all the guys I'm going to list are listed on the North squad for the Alabama roster. The head coach of the team will be Pickens County head coach Michael Williams, who a lot of people might remember played at the University of Alabama, also played for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. Well, he'll be the head coach of the team. Now, the offense will feature Piedmont quarterback Jack Hayes, Amarion Finch, they call him Fat Finch over at Etowah, plays tight end receiver. Another tight end receiver is Clyde Curry from Gadsden City. An offensive lineman, John David, they call him J.D. Hall, plays at Arab. Another offensive lineman from Gadsden City is Aaron Wood. He's listed as an athlete, but he's Anderson's quarterback, but he'll go to South Carolina and play safety. Anderson quarterback Cameron Sadlin, once again, listed as an athlete, so I won't be a bit surprised if they play him a little bit at quarterback, a little bit at safety. On the defensive side of the ball, Gadsden City's Stephen Jones, a defensive back, will be joined in the defensive backfield by Alexandria's Antonio Ross, listed as another DB. Ross is pledged to go to Liberty. Will Kinnear from Arab, a defensive lineman, will also line up that defensive front, another player from Arab. And on special teams, a great kicker from Asheville, Grayson Simpson. And then also on the coaching staff as well, some more local representation there. Assistant coach Jeremy Sullivan played his football at Jacksonville State. He's now the head coach over at Boaz High School. First-year head coach over at Etowah High School, Matt Glover, will be an assistant coach for Mike Williams' staff. And Shay Monroe, the coach over at Asheville, who we've had here on the show a couple of times. He will also be an assistant coach for the 64th annual HSAA North-South All-Star Football Game. So lots of players, lots of coaches will be represented in that game that comes your way once again on December 16th.
Yeah, and all these players that you just read off their names, very deserving of that. Those are guys we've been talking about really all season long and making big impact for their teams. And such great high school football. Hard to believe we're already at playoff time, and a lot of these guys we're going to see go deep in the playoffs and help their teams make really deep runs.
Yeah, you have to imagine that Piedmont will go very, very deep in the playoffs. Etowah is expected to go deep in the playoffs as well. The Anniston Bulldogs right now, ranked number 2 in the state, expected to do very well in the playoffs. Alexandria historically has had great playoff runs. Arab right now having probably the best season in recent memory in night football. Meanwhile, great situations going on as well with Pickens County, who will be headed up by Michael Williams. So, of course, he will try to coach his team to a state championship, but then right after that, he'll get his team ready for the South team, who will also field a really good team as well in the Alabama High School North-South All-Star game. And once again, this is it's been a really tight contest overall. Last year's contest, it was a 14-10 game won by the North. The South holds a very, very slim edge over the North overall. The South leads the series 32-30-2 overall. That first game played way back in 1948. So lots and lots of players have played in this game over the course of time. We expect to see talent that'll go to the next level, play Power 5 football, play the Group of 5. So it's great to see that the local guys are getting some love there on this staff. And it'd be different if it was, headed up by a guy that's in this area. But, a lot of players are from the Northeast Alabama area. Some play for the same team. Lots of Gadsden City players, an Etowah coach and a player, a couple of Arab players there as well. So this will be a really fantastic to watch. And this also goes kind of hand in hand with the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game as well, where you'll see a lot of other players in that game. So it's great to see, number one, these games, taking place after the state championship game. You're still in football mode. And then secondarily, it's good to see the local guys be able to showcase their talent.
For sure. And so that's going to be great to watch all these guys play again. That is Friday night, December the 16th at Hancock Whitney Stadium, home of the South Alabama Jaguars down in Mobile. That is the 64th AHSAA North-South All-Star football games. So some local flavor playing there. And, of course, this week is round one of the high school state playoffs. And so we'll be talking more high school football as we move through the week. Getting ready for round one playoff action, and should be some really good games and involving our local teams this week. Want to thank you for listening to Hoax Bluff football this year, and not a great finish to the season. Tough loss to Sardis, 16-14 on Friday night there at Sardis. Hats off to Coach Chris Stevenson, able to get the Sardis Lions a win in their final game. Tough game Friday night for the Eagles, but we appreciate you for listening all season long to Hoax Bluff High School football here on Fox Sports 102.9 and Game Night as well, Scoreboard, all of our great high school football programming. We love bringing you here on Fox Sports 102.9. We've got tons to get to as we head into hour number two. Gerhard, a lot of folks look forward to this day every year because we get the college football playoff. The poll that means something in the end comes out tonight for the first time. So we're going to give you who we think is in, who we think's out. We'll do that to start the hour. We'll talk with Blake Topmeyer. He's SEC columnist with USA. Blake Topmeyer. He's SEC columnist with USA Today Network. He will join us, talk some SEC football, and we'll also listen in to Bryce Young and Brian Kelly because there's a big matchup in Baton Rouge this weekend. We'll do all that as we continue here on this Tuesday afternoon. WKXX Live returns for hour two in a moment. in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani.
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
We make our way through this Tuesday afternoon, and we have found hour number 2 of WKXX Live. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani. We are here and ready to go for another hour. You can get your phone calls in, 256-413-1029. And, it's a big day in college football. We always look forward to the first college football playoff ranking that comes out. The AP poll means nothing. It's something for us to look at and talk about, but means nothing in the end. I really like that the playoff waits till now. Waits till the first week in November. The first Tuesday in November is when they release this. And I think that's really smart on their part. I like, we get to speculate. We get to think about what they're going to do. But I like them waiting till now to release it.
Yeah, me too, because you take no prejudgments. You take no biases into it. You take a look at the landscape after 7-8 games, depending on when your bye week was, and you're able to evaluate a team based on a wide range of games and base the team on a lot of different characteristics, injuries, where they played those games, how close these games were and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, if you were to take just a preseason poll, go look at the preseason poll and go look at some of the laughable teams that are ranked in the top 10, ranked in the top 25. Yeah, so you take all that prejudice out of it. You just judge teams based on an 8-game sample size.
Yeah, and so tonight they will tell us the first 4 that they have here this week, and of course we'll see who's outside of their top 4. See what the playoff committee is thinking right now, and it's hard to tell what they're going to be looking at because I think it's different every year. Are they? How are they basing these rankings? What are they basing them off of? But we'll find out kind of what they're thinking. And I feel like this first one kind of sets the tone we kind of find out, are they going by the eye test? Are they looking at the schedules? What are they looking at? And I think this first one kind of gives us an idea of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you who we think are going to be the top 4 and the first couple out. And then we'll kind of talk about what we kind of expect from the committee. So let's start. Let's go 4 down. You'll go 4. I'll go 4. We'll kind of go back and forth like that. Who do you have as your number 4 on your prediction for tonight?
My number 4 prediction, as far as which one are we doing first? The committees or my ballot?
Your ballot.
My ballot. Okay. On my ballot at number 4, I've got Michigan. I honestly just think that they're having obviously a great season overall, and at the same time too, their win, the way they beat Penn State, to me was really big. Michigan State's not having such a great season, so I don't consider that this huge game for them. But the way they're able to run the football, they've played physical. They needed to win close. They've needed to win tough. They needed to win by blowouts. They've done a little bit of everything. I got the Wolverines there at number 4.
Yes, so I've got Michigan at number 4 as well. They're 8-0, until they prove otherwise, which I think they will have a loss. And obviously I think Ohio State's probably going to beat them.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll have another one in there, but I've got Michigan number 4. Who do you think number 3?
I got on my ballot, I have Tennessee at number 3. I went back and forth on this one, but I got the Vols there. Obviously that win over Florida doesn't look as sexy. That win over Pitt doesn't look as good. Now they've done what good teams do. Them and my number 2 team have done what good teams do. They blow out average, mediocre, bad teams. They've done that. But as of right now, the resume at this point doesn't stack up to my number 2 teams. I got Tennessee at 3.
I've got Ohio State 3.
Okay.
So I've got the Buckeyes number 3. They've a lot of good wins. They've been blowing people out. But and I like to go when I do this kind of stuff, I like to go head to head. If these 2 teams matched up, who I think would win.
Yeah.
And I thought and Ohio State is the number 3 team. Who you got at 2?
My number 2 team will be Ohio State. The Buckeyes have done exactly what I've expected, good teams to do. They blow out bad teams. Now, you can make an argument that their strength of schedule has not been good. And the Notre Dame looked good on paper at the very beginning of the year. I believe that was a top 5 matchup when they first battled. This is another reason why you don't necessarily want to take preseason rankings going into it. But this is a team, as far as efficiency goes, as far as basically every single advanced metric offensively, this is a team that is number 1 or number 2 in most categories. And doing what they did against Penn State, putting up 44 against them, putting up 54 against a really good Iowa defense as well. I got the Buckeyes in at number 2.
I've got Tennessee number 2. I think, and obviously this Saturday will decide a lot with Georgia and Tennessee playing. But again, with my head-to-head thought, if Tennessee and Ohio State played today, who I think would win, I think Tennessee would win that game. So that's what made me put Tennessee there at number 2. Obviously, amazing offensive numbers. Are they there yet? We'll find out Saturday, I think, if they're there yet. But right now, I think I've got them at number 2. Who do you got at number 1?
My number 1 is, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs going into this season. Obviously, everybody thought that they might have a drop-off because of 15 guys going in the NFL draft. But they haven't had that drop-off yet. They've had a couple of disappointing games. But to me, of the top 4 teams, they had the most impressive win.
Yeah.
So that win over Oregon will go a long way. It continues to look as solidly as they have. If we were to stretch out my poll a little bit longer, Oregon's at the top 10. So they had the most impressive win, and they've looked solid. Yeah, you can point to the Kent State game where they didn't look good. You can, of course, point to the Missouri game where they didn't look great. But still, to me, they have the most impressive W of all the 4 teams left that are in this top 4 undefeated right now so far.
Yeah, I've got Georgia number 1 as well. Who would be your first 2 out? Who would be your 5 and 6?
As of right now, at my 5, I've got Alabama in at number 5, and then I've got TCU in at number 6. I think TCU's played a really difficult schedule. A lot of people will consider now if you do the eye test in your head, or if you do the matchup in your head, TCU probably you don't put them that high. But to me, they've answered the challenge and they've played a really tough schedule. So I like TCU there at number 5, but I don't like them better than Alabama right now. So I have Alabama there at as the number 5 team, and TCU there as 6, and then Clemson in there at number 7. So of those top 3 teams that are out, it's in that order.
Yeah, I've got Clemson, TCU, and Alabama. I question myself on that, but that's who I have. I certainly think Alabama can definitely raise their stock and sneak their way in there. But I know the committee likes that 0 in the in your record.
Very true.
And but I think we may see tonight something totally different than what we may think. I know a lot of people have been asking the question: is Tennessee a number 1 team? Do you think they are?
I don't think that they are. The one game that could push them over the top, and keep in mind the way that the committee ranks these things, and I'll give you some of the bullet points just as a reminder. I have to remind myself every year as well. Some of the big time kind of bullet points that the committee keeps in mind. Number 1 is strength of schedule. Number 2, obviously, conference championships, which we haven't had so far. Number 3 is head-to-head. Number 4 is the results against common opponents. And then number 5, results against ranked opponents. But it's not ranked as far as the AP poll. It's not ranked as far as the coaches poll. It's ranked as far as the committee's poll. So if the committee has, let's just say the committee has Kentucky is as the top, let's call it top 20 team. Well, that boosts Tennessee stock big time. So then, yeah, if the committee has Kentucky ranked really high, then yeah, I do believe Tennessee can be a top a number 1 team for them. Remember a few years ago, where Mississippi State had played a pretty daunting schedule, and Mississippi State came as the number 1 team in the nation in the very first week of the poll, mainly because of who they had played going into it and who they had beaten going into it. So if you take a look at Tennessee's already got a win over LSU. Tennessee's already got a win over Alabama. And Tennessee's already got a win over Kentucky. I expect all 3 of those teams to be in the top 25.
Yeah.
I expect Alabama to be in the top 10. I expect LSU to be in the top maybe 17. And I expect Kentucky to be in the top 20, 25. Well, if you take just those 3, then yeah, I do believe Tennessee's got a great shot to be the committee's number one team.
Yeah.
Even though they're not my number one team.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's so many things that can happen. That comes out tonight, and that of course ESPN will have that coming up tonight. We're gonna get more, have more SEC talk on the other side of this break, as Blake Topmeyer is gonna join us, talk some SEC football. We will do that on the other side. Stick around.
Alana was
We are back here on WKXX Live on this Tuesday afternoon. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani here with you as we welcome on our friend Blake Topmeyer. He is SEC columnist for the USA Today Network. Blake, as always, appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me back.
I know the burning question on everybody's mind right now after the news yesterday, Auburn letting go of Brian Harsin. Who do you think the next head coach of the Auburn Tigers will be?
I think it's really a three-man list. I don't see that the Auburn coach needs to, or the Auburn search needs to extend any farther. I mean, I think at the top of the list, you have to make Lane Kiffin say no. He's the proven commodity at this point. If you can win at Ole Miss at the level he's winning, I think you can win at Auburn. He's a veteran of the SEC at this point, having coached at Tennessee, Ole Miss, and having been Nick Saban's offensive coordinator. I think he needs to be candidate number one, and I think he very well may be candidate number one. And if Lane says no, then I think you decide who you want between Hugh Freeze and Deion Sanders, and cut the check. I mean, we all know Hugh Freeze would say yes, right? I mean, I can hear him up there in Lynchburg, Virginia, saying yes right now. All that needs to be done is make the offer. And in terms of Deion, I think we've heard Deion himself say he would entertain interest from Power 5 jobs. So yeah, I think Lane is step one, and if you swing and you miss there, then I think you decide between Hugh and Deion, and don't overcomplicate things.
No doubt about it. Blake, I have a kind of a more specific question about Auburn, and this is the interesting angle to me as we go into this coaching search. From an attractiveness perspective, from just purely what Auburn looks like going into it, not the historical part of the job, but where they sit right now, the first day of November 2022, how attractive is this job for guys like Lane, guys like Hugh Freeze? Is it the exact same as it was pre-Brian Harsin? Do you think it's changed at all? The perception of it, the layout of it? What do you feel like the candidates for the job think about this Auburn program?
Well, I think it depends on where you're currently at. If you're Hugh Freeze and you're desperate to get back into the SEC, like beggars can't be choosers, right? Someone offers you a lifeline in the SEC at a school with a brand like Auburn. You say, where do I sign? I'll be on the next flight. I think with Lane, it's a different story. As you alluded to, I mean, historically, Auburn has a higher ceiling, historically, than what Ole Miss has. But Ole Miss right now, I mean, Lane has them rolling. I think there should be a lot of pause on his end before he leaves what he has built at Ole Miss and jumps into the Viper's nest at Auburn. I think Lane maybe would have the potential to win at a little higher level even at Auburn. Maybe. I think maybe there's a bigger NIL platform there, maybe a little better recruiting platform there at Auburn, maybe a little more fervent fan support. However, Lane at Ole Miss, I mean, he can make the playoff at Ole Miss once the playoff expands to 12 teams. This Ole Miss team this year, would be right in the thick of the playoff conversation if this was a 12-team playoff. He could stay at Ole Miss, have a long celebrated career. They'd build him a statue there. Or he could stay at Ole Miss until he gets something that is undeniably better than the situation that he has right now. I don't think Auburn is undeniably better. I think you can make a case for it being better, but I think you could make a case that Kiffin would be wise to stay at Ole Miss. So I do think it depends on the situation you're in. Again, with someone like Hugh Freeze, with someone who's maybe looking to make the jump up the ladder, a significant jump up the ladder, you don't worry about what happened to Brian Harsin because you're looking to make the jump. Lane Kiffin, he doesn't necessarily need to do that. He can stay put if he wants.
Yeah, very good points there. Blake Topmeyer joining us, talking some SEC football. Brian Harsin, the first SEC coach to be fired this season. I'm curious, do you see any other coaches, whether in season or after the season, any more coaches in the FCC to be fired this year?
I lean toward no. I mean, I think the two candidates would be Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri or Jimbo Fisher. With Drinkwitz, he finds himself in the uncomfortable scenario of working for an athletic director who did not hire him. The AD who hired Drinkwitz is gone now. He's a struggling coach. He did get an important victory at South Carolina last weekend, kind of tamped down some of the unrest there, but I still don't know. I would lean toward this is not a bowl team for Missouri, and this is year 3. I think he'll make it to next year and go into next season on the hot seat. With Jimbo, I think the only reason we're having this conversation about could Jimbo be fired instead of who are the coaching candidates to replace him is all tied to that buyout, right? I mean, the $87.5 million buyout that he has, the only thing that stands between a Jimbo Fisher and a pink slip as we look at it today. Now that $87.5 million buys you a lot of protection. On the flip side, I will never say never anymore when it comes to these buyouts. Every time we think a buyout is too rich and a school won't do it, we're proven wrong. Now, this would blow out of the water anything we've seen in terms of buyout. But doesn't it feel like we're moving toward that point? Like they're not putting this toothpaste back in the tube. We're heading down those tracks. And Texas A&M, everything about their handling of Jimbo Fisher has been blowing precedent out of the water. I mean, handing him a 10-year, $75 million deal to hire him from Florida State, that was unprecedented. And then they gave him the contract extension and guaranteed the whole thing to give him a fresh 10-year deal. That was unprecedented. There's no buyout if Jimbo were to leave. That's fairly unprecedented. Like, everything they've done in their handling of this has been unprecedented, so it really surprised us if Texas A&M resets the bar for coaching buyouts. It wouldn't. I think they will at some point. Will it be this season? I still lean toward no, but at some point, I think Texas A&M is going to break the record for coaching buyouts.
Wow, and that would be obviously monstrous. One more kind of coaching angle thing here. Let's just play that out. Now, let's just say in a hypothetical world, we're jumping to December now. Auburn, A&M, and Missouri are all open. Which one do you think would be the most attractive? I would think obviously between Auburn and A&M, but from a position to be able to immediately bounce back to, they all have SEC championship aspirations. They've all knocked on the door and been close and been there on a few occasions. Where do you put the SEC jobs kind of ranked up on a shelf?
The ones you mentioned, I'd go A&M, and I think Auburn fans would bristle with that. I mean, Auburn won the national championship in 2010. That's looking at things through a history lens, though. I mean, we saw last year in this NIL landscape, Jimbo and Texas A&M were able to sign the number one recruiting class in college football. Texas A&M is a revenue behemoth. I think they have a huge platform, frankly, probably even bigger than what Auburn has. And so, yeah, I think coaches look at this as, what am I going to inherit? What am I going to have an opportunity to build in this NIL space? How good is my opportunity going to be to do that where I'm going? And I think you could step in at Texas A&M and inherit more riches in terms of talent than you would at Auburn. I mean, Brian Harsin did nothing for this program. He ran off most of the talent he did have, or they departed for the NFL after last season. He didn't recruit well. He didn't bring in good transfers. You're really starting from scratch at Auburn. Now, thanks to the transfer portal, you can make up ground very, very quickly. And I don't know, Auburn doesn't have to resign itself to like a 5-year rebuild. It can rebuild quickly. But I think at A&M, if that were to open, which, again, I don't think it will this year, but I think you would step into some more riches on day one at A&M. And, again, I think coaches look at that as, hey, just last year in this NIL space, the Aggies signed the number one class in the nation. I think people would salivate over that.
We're talking SEC football with Blake Topmeyer, SEC columnist for the USA Today Network. I want to get to some games that are happening this week. Georgia, Tennessee. A lot of eyes are going to be on this game. The college football playoff rankings will come out later. Most likely, and probably both teams will be ranked there very high in that. What is most appealing to you about this game? What are you going to be looking for in this Georgia-Tennessee game?
Well, I think this tells us who's a favorite to get to the national championship game, right? I think the winner of this game, joins whoever emerges as the cream of the crop in the Big Ten between Ohio State and Michigan as the front runners to reach the national championship. I think with Tennessee, the comparison has been made to 2019 LSU. I don't think it's exactly spot on, but I do like the comparison. There are some parallels there. LSU won the title that year, went undefeated behind a transfer quarterback in Joe Burrow. a so-called offensive whiz and Joe Brady on the sideline. And they just outscored everybody. They averaged more than 48 points per game that year. Their defense was good, not great, was good enough to let the offense take care of things, and nobody could stop that offense. And I do see some similarities there with Tennessee, with Hendon Hooker, the quarterback transfer, with Josh Heupel as the offensive mastermind, with a scheme no defense can figure out how to stop. And their defense is not great. It's been good enough to give its offense a chance to win, which I do think is reminiscent to 2019 LSU. The difference is that 2019 LSU had 14 players who were selected in the NFL draft the following spring. I don't think there's the same abundance of NFL talent on this Tennessee team. There certainly is some. I don't think there's that same abundance. For Georgia, Georgia's probably the most well-rounded team in the nation. It's either them or Ohio State. When you're just looking at both sides of the ball, being a well-rounded team, the conversation for me is either Georgia or Ohio State. So it's kind of like, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the one team that has this absolute juggernaut on one side of the ball, or do you prefer the more well-rounded team? I don't know the answer to that. I think that will be revealed somewhat on Saturday in Athens.
No doubt. The other big game, obviously, being Alabama and LSU. We've seen Bama struggles on the road this year. How do you see that one playing out, given how well LSU has played here recently?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fight, and I think you hit on it. Their struggles on the road, it has been more of a struggle for them when they've hit the road, other than that home game against A&M. And I think LSU is an improving team. I think Jaden Daniels is an improving quarterback. I think this will be a tight game. I think LSU will be up for this game. They always are, right? It seems like they're always up for this game, no matter where they stand with their program, good, bad, or otherwise. They usually get ready for the Alabama game. And I think it'll be tight. I like Alabama winning a close one, but I don't know. I see a lot of growth in Jaden Daniels, the quarterback. You know, at the beginning of the season, the guy was a runner with a bit of an arm. Now he's a quarterback. I still like him more as a runner than I do as a passer, but he's gotten good enough to where defenses have to honor his passing ability. If not, he can make you pay, and he's still very dangerous with his legs, and I think that's going to be a handful for this Alabama defense.
Always good stuff from Blake Topmeyer, SEC columnist with the USA Today Network. Blake, really appreciate you hopping on with us, talking some SEC football with us this afternoon. We'll have to do it again real soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Blake Topmeyer, SEC columnist, USA Today Network, joins us here on WKXX Live. Good, always good stuff there. Like I said, from Blake Topmeyer. And we got some more college football. I want to dive a little bit more into this LSU-Alabama game because I think it's going to be a really good one. We'll hear kind of what both sides are saying right now. We'll hear from Bryce Young. We'll hear from Brian Kelly. We'll do that next.
The Press Box. This is where the big
Local sports station, Fox Sports 102.9.
It is WKXX Live on this Tuesday afternoon. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you as we're going to talk some college football now. Some more college football. And that's been a hot topic today here on the show. As we got a big game coming up this week. Alabama in Baton Rouge taking on the LSU Tigers. And we were just talking in the break. Like, this Alabama-LSU game, I feel like every year it's competitive. It doesn't matter if LSU's having a down year. It doesn't matter if Alabama's having a down year. Like, they come out ready to play in this game. Yeah. We've seen, whether it's in Tuscaloosa, whether it is in Baton Rouge, these two teams come out ready to play in this game. And we have seen some of the most memorable games, I think, in this Alabama-LSU rivalry.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects that go to this, but I think that this rivalry took another step up when Nick Saban got to Tuscaloosa. I remember the first few years, it was the former LSU coach coming back to LSU, and there was a lot of hate and vitriol on the other side. A lot of that's died down because both teams have won national championships in the time that's happened. However, I do think now you still have a certain point to me where these two teams recruit against one another. And I would think if you were to take the top recruiting bases there in the SEC, I think Alabama does such a good job of recruiting in the state of Louisiana. And there's, I think, very, very few battles that LSU hates to lose more than they do hate losing to Alabama in a battle for a player. And I think that feeds into it. I think that the cultures still feed into it. And at the same time, that no matter, as you said, no matter what year it is, it feels like this game is on that next level. Now, if I were to tell you that LSU has won just one game in the last 12 times they've matched up, this includes national championship games, this includes regular season games, you would think that's kind of crazy, but it just seems to me that the game produces these epic results that we always remember, even though Bama's been on the winning side of most of those games. You see very few blowouts in this game, including last year, a 2014 game, and then LSU won the 2 years before that in 2019 when Joe Burrow and them were in town, where Blake Sartmeyer was just talking about that crazy 2019 football team. This game always provides us these epic matchups, and I think it's largely because of the talent there on the field, as well as all the other storylines that go into recruiting and everything else.
Yeah, and you mentioned this, with Blake a moment ago. Alabama's really struggled on the road this year. You look at the Texas game, 1-point game. You look at the Tennessee loss. They lost there on the road. Arkansas, they struggled for about 3 quarters. There's been some serious struggles for Alabama this year when they make road trips, and they're playing in one of the toughest environments. I mean, Knoxville was rocking and rolling. Yeah. Baton Rouge is going to be pretty similar on Saturday night.
At night, and that's the craziest thing. It's Baton Rouge at night. This works out in perfect favor for what LSU loves. They love this atmosphere. They love this environment. And one of the key things that I've found really interesting, and honestly, being on this side of life, on this side of the sports world, where you're getting a lot of sound bites and whatnot, I found Alabama's approach to this really refreshing as well. You might remember Nick Saban said after the Tennessee game, he admitted to it. He didn't give the coach speak. He admitted to it. He used words like anxiety. He used words like, we are using phrases like, we're normally chanting in the tunnel. We weren't chanting. And he was asking guys, why weren't they chanting? He palpably gave words to the nature of the way Alabama was processing this game from an emotional standpoint. And we saw the same things kind of play out at Texas. But the good thing about it is that they have probably the most poised guy on the field wearing the number 9 jersey for the Crimson Tide in Blake and Bryce Young. So I think that they understand the world that they live in. And I think that the leadership group for Alabama has to do a better job inside. There's only so much coaches can do. I think the players have to start leading themselves when it comes to these tight situations with a team like LSU now, a team like Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, who's really, really excited to play Alabama.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very tough place to play for Alabama, and with that, and I know these teams have the indoor facilities with the speakers turned up as loud as they can, but I don't think, and we saw this in Tennessee. I don't think you can practice what you're going to hear
Right.
On Saturday night as you take on LSU. And Bryce Young spoke to just the challenges they've had.
Yeah, he's been really honest about the challenges they've had so far up to this point, and then some of the things that the players will have to do, the leadership group, as they call them at Alabama, will have to do to have a better result this week on the road than they've had in the previous two tough environments in Knoxville and in Austin.
I think obviously us being able to play on the road, you get good experiences from there. But we understand obviously going to play at a place like LSU, to play there, it's going to be an extremely hostile environment. And although we've been in hostile environments before, they're all different. There's nothing, we can't emulate being in that stadium with those fans. And again, we just understand the challenges ahead. I think. Again, us being in hostile environments before, it helps us, but we understand it's a new challenge. We have a lot of respect for them as a team, for players and coaches in the program. So we just want to make a better environment, as a leadership group and as a team. We all have each other's back. We all play for each other. A lot of it's in the preparation we have throughout the week. And then on game days, just trying to create making sure that we have a good environment, we have good energy in the locker room and on the field. And, we're always, especially in the leadership, we're emphasizing making sure that we're supporting each other, making sure we know we have each other's back. And, again, especially when we're on the road in a hostile environment, it's important for us to lean on each other and make sure we have each other's back. So it's been a lot of emphasis on that recently.
You know what? He makes a good point. I think leadership is going to be key for Alabama this week. I forget what game it was, but, Nick Saban said these guys, they weren't themselves coming out. Even in warm-ups, usually they're, having a good time. They're loose out. Tennessee game.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was Texas or Tennessee, but they weren't themselves. The leadership has to step up and make sure that they are themselves going into this game.
Yeah, like just what I talked about before. They're honest about what happens on the road. Like I said, anxiety was the key word that Coach Saban used, and it wasn't just some ho-hum thing. It was like, hey, yeah, we have to be able to step up here on these road environments because it's already difficult for us because we're everybody's Super Bowl. That's number one. Then you add on top of that a team that's playing with confidence, as Tennessee was, and a team that's playing right now with a whole bunch of momentum like LSU is right now. A team that's played well in the second half of both of their games, of their two previous games, both against Florida and against Ole Miss. They put up 45 points in both. Jane Daniels, who Blake Topmeyer was talking about, has turned into a real true quarterback, not just a guy that can run around and throw it. So, yeah, it's a different situation as you go in. It would have been difficult no matter what, even if LSU had us on a 3-game losing streak. Now you put LSU feeling themselves and really wanting to show the nation that they're one of the top teams. They have now the opportunity to do that.
And also Brian Kelly has the challenge of not letting his guys just get sucked into to what's to come Saturday night.
Yeah, and he's used the same phrase a couple of times about this is the reason why you come to LSU for games like this. This is the challenge that he wanted to bring to himself, but now he's doing it with a team that's got a lot of confidence in it. So now it's what Nick Saban always talks about, keeping the main thing, letting the tree be the tree and let the shadow be the shadow. Don't focus on the shadow, focus on the tree. And Brian Kelly saying a lot of the same things. They just remind ourselves how we got to this point.
The first thing we need to do is just understand that, you have to take this game and think about how you got here. And we've done it by our preparation. We've prepared well. We have focused on, playing our best when our best is needed. We can't be distracted by, this is a big game or this is Alabama. That's not going to help us in this situation. What's going to help us is playing our best when our best is needed. And our best players are going to have to play well. We're going to have to play consistently for 4 quarters. We must get off to a good start because we've shown that we're going to play well in the second half, but we have to play well for 4 quarters. And we have to play consistently, one play at a time. And all the basic tenets of a game like this is that's why you come to LSU. It's not pressure, it's a privilege to play in games like this.
We will be previewing Alabama LSU much more as we move through this week, getting ready for that big matchup coming up Saturday night. A lot has been going on in the NFL. It's a lot says the trade deadline is. We've got a lot of trades. Want to get to some NFL news and notes coming up next. So stick around as we continue here on WKXX Live.
WKXX.
We continue on this Tuesday afternoon. It is WKXX Live. It is Chase and Gerhard with you. As we've had a busy show, a lot to get to today. But the NFL trade deadline ended 47 minutes ago. They had until 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 Eastern, to trade. And there has been a monumental number of trades happen today.
Yeah, Adam Schefter just tweeted out that there's been a record 10 trades today. That's the most in NFL history on the trade deadline day. Now, of course, it started a couple of weeks ago. You had that huge play where the San Francisco 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey. It was kind of quiet after that. And then, boom, all of a sudden today, lots of picks, lots of movement. Once again, 10 different guys changing teams and some teams now kind of making that move. You're seeing if teams are buyers or sellers going into that next round and seeing where their teams can get lined up for the postseason.
Yeah, and what are some trades, maybe some big names or trades that stuck out to you?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So I'll start with some of the ones yesterday and then bleed into today. Robert Quinn, obviously, making that move from the Bears to the Philadelphia Eagles. Kadarius Toney, who we talked about a couple of or late last week, also making the move from the Giants to the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the big ones today, Roquan Smith, the former linebacker at Georgia, who had a great career with the Chicago Bears. He's now the newest member of the Baltimore Ravens, adding to that stacked defense. TJ Hockenson, who's the tight end, you might remember him from the Detroit Lions. Well, the Lions traded him as well as a 2023 fourth-round pick and a 2024 conditional fourth-round pick to the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings adding to their arsenal, getting TJ Hockenson. One of the biggest names today, Chase, is a guy that shares your name. Chase Claypool, great wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, played for Notre Dame. He's now joining Justin Fields in the Chicago Bears. So for the longest time, people kept asking about the Bears. Like, why are the Bears not giving Justin Fields any help? Well, they got him some big help today. Chase Claypool, that's a good move for them because there was rumors that he could go to the Packers and really help out Aaron Rodgers. That obviously did not happen. Also a move today, the defensive side of the ball, Bradley Chubb, who is a great linebacker for the Denver Broncos. He is now going to the Miami Dolphins. So they're adding both help for Tua offensively, but and also for that defensive group, getting Bradley Chubb there in-house. Another big player out today, Jeff Wilson, a running back. He was with the San Francisco 49ers. He's now joining the Miami Dolphins as well. So the Dolphins really aggressive today. Former Alabama star wide receiver Calvin Ridley, who was playing for the Atlanta Falcons, he is now the newest member of the Jacksonville Jaguars. You might remember Ridley is serving a year-long suspension for gambling on games where he was hurt, bet on his team to win. Take that for what it's worth as far as the gambling goes, but he lost that appeal and he is out for the year. So when he comes back next year, he will join Trevor Lawrence in the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as defensive end Jacob Martin going from the Jets to the Broncos. And last one today, Nyheim Hines, who had a pretty solid career as a member of the Indianapolis Colts as a running back. He is now the newest member of the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills struggled to run the ball for a long time, adding Nyheim Hines, who's had some productivity level in his time as a pro.
Yeah, so lots of trades happening today in the NFL. Again, the trade deadline today here on the first day of November. So lots of movement. Since I wasn't on the show yesterday, how about the Falcons?
Yeah,
getting a win. I thought they were going to lose it a couple of times, but get a win over the Panthers.
Oh, the monsters. And I think if you talk about the surprise teams in the NFL, they're right there at the top right now. They kind of do what they do, and they continue to run the football. They're one of the best running teams in the entire league, and this is without their leading rusher, Cordero Patterson, who went on IR a couple of weeks ago. This is a team that I've been very, very surprised with throughout the entire season. Them and the Seahawks probably are 1 and 2, but considering the fact that the over-under on this team win total was 4.5, depending on where you look, between 4.5 and 5. This team's already 4-4 in first place in the NFC South.
How about that? How about those Falcons getting it done? Before we get out of here, want to mention Jacksonville State women's basketball had an exhibition today. And we talked with Coach Rick Petrie last week. He joined us and talked about the offseason and getting ready for this season. He told us exhibition against Montevallo today. And it was the Gamecocks winning 69-64 in the exhibition game. They did that this morning, had a bunch of students there, which made for a cool environment for the exhibition game. How about Amari Martin, 5 threes, game-high 15 points to help the Gamecocks there win 69-64.
I know that they really like to see that. I'm sure the coach probably talking about some of the things defensively they could do better, but this is one of the hallmarks of this basketball team over the course of the last 2 years, is being able to score the basketball with consistency. They weren't able to do that for a really long time, but they have found consistent scoring. And when you can get on the outside like that, it really shows that this team has a reliable threat in Amari Martin. And as Coach told us last week, you know, this is a league that goes 5 high, 5 wide. There's spread. So if you can have sharpshooters on the outside, you can dribble, drive, penetrate, kick that thing out. And if you have people that can shoot like Amari Martin did today, knocking down 5 3-point shots, that's always really dangerous. And then considering the way they already play defense, it's got to be a really fantastic game so far for our fantastic strategies so far for what JSU wants to do.
Yep, the men will have an exhibition against Auburn Montgomery coming up on Thursday night. But can you believe college basketball a week from tonight?
Right,
we'll see college basketball tip off.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, it feels like we just said so long to the season last year, said one shining moment, and you had Kansas, tear down the nets, and then we're back at it again. I think there's a lot to be excited about. If you're an Auburn fan, Alabama fan, Jacksonville State, UAB, I think Sanford will have a good team this year as well. No matter who you cheer for in this state, I feel like it's been a really, really good offseason for a lot of these teams, and I'm really excited to see what they have in store here for the next few months.
Yeah, and just a note here for Jacksonville State, their game against Alabama on November the 18th. They've set a time. It's 8 p.m. and the SEC Network has picked it up, so you'll be able to watch Jacksonville State men take on Alabama again November the 18th on the SEC Network. And hey, that's good for the Gamecocks to get a little exposure there against the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, national attention there. They got a nationwide game to end off last year, that game against Auburn. They'll get some national attention once again after making the big dance last year when they go face Alabama.
So we've had, again, a lot to cover today. Appreciate our guest. We had in hour one, Jeffrey Lee, AuburnLive.com. We had Blake Topmeyer in hour two from the USA Today. And, man, just all kinds of great content in between those two guys. We'll be back at it tomorrow from 2 to 4. Promise you more great college football talk. And as we get you ready for the weekend. That's all the time we have for you today. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll do it again tomorrow on Wednesday from 2 to 4. Join us then.
The Press Box.